The diner was unusually quiet that evening, too quiet for a place famous for country music, hot coffee, and the chatter of travelers passing through. But at the corner booth, a little boy sat stiff as stone, his small hands trembling around a glass of water he hadn't touched. His name was Evan, just 8 years old, with sandy hair falling into his anxious blue eyes. Anyone could tell something was wrong, anyone who cared enough to look. Most people didn't. Most people were too busy with their own lives to notice the way Evan flinched every time the man beside him, his mother's boyfriend, shifted in his seat. The man's voice was low, angry, and sharp, the kind that made you feel danger before you even understood it. But someone did notice. The diner door swung open with a heavy slam, and the air changed instantly. 4 leather-clad bikers walked in, patches shining, boots thudding, presence impossible to ignore. The room stiffened. People whispered. Some even looked away, because on their backs was a name that carried both fear and legend. Hell's Angels. Leading them was Bear Thompson, a massive man with a silver beard, tattoos that told 1,000 stories, and eyes that saw more than most people realized. He didn't look dangerous. He looked observant. As the waitress guided the bikers to a table near Evan, Bear's gaze drifted toward the boy. And that's when it happened. Barely visible, barely a movement, but enough. Evan lifted his hand under the table and made a tiny, secret gesture, 4 fingers curled, thumb tucked, then pressed down. The silent signal for help. Bear froze. For a moment, nobody noticed. Not even the man sitting beside Evan. But Bear recognized it instantly. His daughter had taught him the sign after volunteering at a women's shelter. He straightened in his seat. And the entire room felt it. The twist no one expected. Bear stood up slowly, deliberately, like a storm gathering its strength. The other bikers watched him, trusting him without a word. He walked toward the boys' table, not with aggression, not with heat, but with a strange gentleness that contrasted everything his appearance suggested. When he reached the booth, he didn't look at Evan. He looked at the man. "Hey," Bear said calmly. "You got a problem here." The man scoffed, but his eyes flickered, fear peeking through the cracks. "Mind your own business," he snapped. Bear smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Kid looks scared. That makes it my business." Around the diner, people held their breath. Phones quietly raised. The waitress froze behind the counter. The man stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. But he had forgotten something. He wasn't facing one biker. He was facing 4, and the Hell's Angels didn't move an inch. They just watched him with the cold patience of men who had lived through much worse. Bear leaned in slightly. "Son," he said in a soft tone, "you good?" It happened so fast the man didn't have time to react. Evan bolted from the booth and ran straight into Bear's side, clutching the rough leather of his vest like it was a life raft. The entire diner gasped. The emotional climax. The man stepped forward, but Bear lifted one giant hand, calm, steady, immovable. "You touch this boy again," Bear said quietly, "and you won't like what happens next." A woman near the counter began crying. A trucker muttered, "About damn time someone stood up." The man backed away, stumbling into the edge of the booth. He muttered something, grabbed his jacket, and stormed out of the diner, slamming the door behind him. As soon as he left, Evan collapsed into a full sob. Not loud, not dramatic, just the heartbreaking release of a child who had been strong for far too long. Bear knelt, this giant, tattooed biker, and placed a hand on Evan's shoulder with a gentleness so pure it silenced the whole room. "You're safe now," Bear said. "We got you." A moment that changed everyone. Within minutes, the police arrived, called by the waitress who had seen Evan signal to but hadn't known what to do. Evan explained everything. The yelling, the threats, the nights he hid in his room, the fear he felt every single day. The officers nodded respectfully to Bear. "You probably saved him," one of them said. Bear shook his head. "Nah, he saved himself. I just listened." And those words, those simple, humble words, stuck with everyone who heard them. An uplifting ending. Evan was placed safely with his aunt later that night. As he left the diner, he turned back and waved shyly at Bear. "Thank you," he whispered. Bear smiled. "Anytime, kiddo." And something incredible happened after that. The story spread, first through the town, then through social media. People who had always judged bikers by their looks suddenly saw them differently. They saw strength used for compassion, power used for protection, and a moment of courage that echoed far beyond a small diner on a quiet evening. In the end, it wasn't about bikers. It wasn't about danger. It wasn't even about the Hell's Angels. It was about one truth. Humanity shows up in the most unexpected places. And sometimes the people who look the scariest have the kindest hearts. And that night, a little boy named Evan learned that there are still heroes in the world.